In the middle of the party, between fake smiles and forced toasts, something caught my attention. My wife hurried out the back with a man I had never seen before. The scene was so sudden that for a moment, I thought it was a coincidence, a mismatch, maybe I was just going to get something. But my instinct screamed. That kind of rush wasn't common. The way he looked around before disappearing through the back door sent a chill down my spine. I knew something was wrong. My feet moved on their own. I followed them. I walked through the hallways of the salon trying not to attract attention. Outside, the music still echoed muffledly, and the night seemed to swallow up any possibility of turning back. I saw the two of them turning the corner, walking side by side, very close. The dress she wore, which minutes before seemed like just a detail of the night, now became a symbol of something I didn't want to see. My hands were sweating. My heart raced with each step. Should I stop? Maybe I was exaggerating, creating paranoia where none existed. But then, I saw the man holding her waist. She didn't move away. I felt a knot form in my stomach. I continued following, each step quieter than the last. They got into a car parked on the side street. I stopped at a safe distance, my breathing heavy, my mind racing. The worst part of a feeling is when it comes true. When doubt disappears and only the raw, naked and cutting truth remains. My wife, the woman who swore to be by my side, who looked into my eyes every morning, who said she loved me, was with another man. And it wasn't a simple meeting. The way they laughed, the touch, the rush to disappear. It was something planned. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a mistake. I ducked behind a nearby car. My chest burned. I needed to see where this went. And I was punished with every detail that unfolded before me. The car did not leave immediately. I saw their silhouettes through the glass. I saw your hand slide down his face. I saw his body lean closer. My eyes burned. My body was shaking. Everything inside me screamed for me to go there and snatch that man away from her, but something kept me still. Maybe it was the shock, maybe it was the morbid desire to see how far she could go. And she went far. The kiss happened there, just a few meters from where I was. A kiss without guilt, without hesitation, a kiss that, just a few hours ago, belonged to me. I was no longer the man in his life. I was no longer the center of his world. I was replaced. And worse, she didn't hesitate. My hands balled into fists. Betrayal wasn't just about one body against another. It was about trust, about loyalty, about the conscious choice to lie every day. How does someone sleep next to someone and, the next night, they are in someone else's arms as if nothing had happened? As if the story built over the years could be thrown in the trash without even a hint of guilt. They left. The car disappeared around the bend in the street and I stood there, feeling my world crumble around me. Returning to the party was no longer an option. Go home and pretend nothing happened. Never. I needed answers. I needed to understand the size of the hole I was thrown into without warning. But what I didn't know, was that this betrayal was just the beginning. I thought I had seen the worst. I thought the shock of that moment would be the height of my pain. But no. What I was about to discover would change everything. It wasn't just a case. It wasn't just a slip-up. It was something much bigger. Something that would make my decision to file for divorce seem like the simplest thing I've ever done in my life. And when everything came to light, when I finally understood what was behind that betrayal, it would be too late for any reconciliation. The only thing left, would be revenge. Welcome to the channel. Here, we do not support and never romanticize betrayal. The stories you will hear are fictional, but they carry an undeniable truth. Betrayal destroys lives, corrodes relationships and leaves marks that never disappear. Our goal is to show, in an intense and realistic way, the consequences of each wrong choice. Now, get ready. Because what you're about to hear, it's shocking, unexpected, and unforgettable. Let the story begin. The night was vibrant, and the hall lit by golden lights reflected the glow of glasses raised in lively toasts. The atmosphere exuded sophistication, a carefully planned celebration where every detail had been meticulously thought out to create the perfect atmosphere. At the center of that scene, walking gracefully among the guests, was Emily, radiant in a deep blue dress that highlighted her intense eyes. Her smile was impeccable, a reflection of the woman everyone admired, elegant, charismatic, self-assured. By her side, Noah, her husband, a man with a strong presence and steady gaze, remained attentive to each interaction, greeting guests cordially. For everyone there, they were the perfect couple, the definition of success and stability, an example of complicity that seemed unshakable. Years of marriage had shaped that relationship, creating a bond that, to any observer, seemed indestructible. Noah had always been a dedicated man. He had built a solid career, maintaining impeccable ethics that had made him respected in his field. She worked hard, but never neglected her personal life, always finding time for Emily, making sure she knew how much she was loved. He liked the feeling of stability, the comfort that came from a successful marriage. For him, Emily was more than a wife, she was his partner, his confidant, the woman he would choose as many times as necessary. The nights with her, the peaceful dinners, the lovingly planned trips, all of this was part of a world that he believed to be solid. And at that moment, as he watched the way she smiled, interacted, and enchanted the guests, he felt even more certain that he had built something true. Emily, in turn, had always enjoyed the life they had together. From the beginning, Noah was that kind of reliable man, the one who made plans and carried them out, who left no doubt about his feelings. She knew he loved her, she saw it in the way he looked at her, in the way he held her hand during social events, in the discreet concern he showed in everyday details. But something inside her lately felt restless, a nagging feeling she didn't know exactly what to name. It was a perfect life, but perfection could sometimes become suffocating. The predictability of the days, the constant rhythm, the absence of surprises, everything seemed to follow a script that, no matter how comfortable it was beginning to lose its shine. The party was important to Noah. A prestigious event, bringing together influential people, an environment in which he always stood out. Emily knew he wanted everything to be impeccable, for them to be together, aligned, as always. And she played her role masterfully, distributing smiles and maintaining interesting conversations, gliding around the room as if she completely belonged to that world. But, inside him, something pulsed differently that night. Something she tried to ignore. Their relationship had history. From the first meetings, through the phase of building a life together, the challenges, the achievements, everything was part of a path that they carefully traced. He remembered the first years, the impulsive trips, the nights when they stayed up late talking about everything and nothing at the same time. Over time, responsibilities increased, a routine was established, and what was previously spontaneous was now planned. Not that it was bad, but it was different. And this difference, this weight of time, seemed to grow inside her without her knowing exactly why. Noah felt like something was different, but he couldn't explain it. Emily was still the woman he had fallen in love with, but there was something in her eyes that unsettled him. Little moments where she seemed distant, evasive answers, that expression he couldn't completely decipher. He tried to ignore it, to convince himself that it was just tiredness, the weight of responsibilities, the natural wear and tear of time. After all, every relationship went through phases, and he was willing to go through anything with her. Soft music filled the room as guests spread out among the elegantly decorated tables. Emily picked up a glass of wine, letting the liquid slide between her fingers, watching the light reflect on the surface. She felt restless, but she didn't want to think about why. The truth was that, lately, her thoughts had been scattered, wandering to places she shouldn't explore. But that night, something felt different, as if the very air around him was charged with an invisible tension. Noah watched her from a distance. He knew her every gesture, every nuance of her behavior, and something about that night made him uncomfortable. He tried to push the thought away, focus on the guests, on the commitments, but his eyes always returned to Emily. She looked beautiful, as always, but there was something about her posture that he couldn't define. And then, in a fleeting moment, he noticed a detail that made his stomach turn. A look. A moment of complicity exchanged with someone on the other side of the room. Too fast to be noticed by anyone but not him. The feeling was immediate. A chill down your spine, a doubt whispering in your mind. He didn't want to be suspicious, he didn't want that thought to take root inside him. Emily had never given any reason for this. But that look made something inside him stir. He tried to convince himself that it was just his mind playing tricks, that he was reading too much into something insignificant. But then he saw her walk away, heading towards the back of the room. The party continued, laughter echoed, glasses clinked in lively toasts, but to Noah, time seemed to have slowed down. His eyes followed her, watching every movement, trying to find logic in it. Reason told him to stay where he was, not to feed paranoia, but intuition screamed louder. Something was happening. And at that moment, without knowing exactly what it was, he made a decision. He would find out. Noah watched Emily disappear through the back of the room, her every step registering in his mind as a sequence he still didn't fully understand. The body reacted before reason, a primal instinct pushing his feet in the direction he knew he shouldn't go. The noise of the guests became a distant noise as he advanced, avoiding the curious looks and loose conversations that filled the room. The air seemed thicker, charged with something he still didn't want to name. There was a weight in his chest, a growing discomfort that turned into something close to fear. He was not an insecure man, he had never needed to question Emily's loyalty, but there was something different that night, an almost imperceptible detail that altered the entire perception of what he thought he knew so well. He passed through the side door without attracting attention, exiting into a hallway that led to a less crowded area. The muffled sound of music still reached there, but was swallowed by the silence outside. His eyes scanned the room quickly, searching for her. His heart was pounding, and a part of him wanted to be wrong, wanted it all to be a mistake, an irrational thought fueled by a night of tension. But intuition continued to push him forward, as if a truth he wasn't ready to face was about to reveal itself. Then he saw it. A few meters away, partially hidden by the shadow of a narrow corridor, were Emily and the man with whom she had exchanged that look minutes before. Noah couldn't see their faces immediately, but he recognized the gestures, the proximity between their bodies, the way she tilted her head to hear something the other whispered. The man touched her arm, sliding his fingers with a naturalness that indicated intimacy. Emily didn't back down. She laughed. A low laugh, which even from a distance seemed to carry something Noah had never heard before. He felt a tightening in his stomach. The chill that ran down his spine was not just discomfort, but devastating certainty. Every second there seemed to drag by in slow motion. He didn't move. I didn't intervene. Something inside him insisted on waiting, as if there was still room for doubt, as if his mind needed definitive proof before falling into the abyss that was already opening at his feet. Emily touched the man's face, her fingers sliding along his jawline, as she did with him on the mornings they woke up together. The impact of that was immediate, an invisible blow that shattered any hope that might still exist. He didn't need to see any more. But you saw. Her lips met his in a kiss that had no hesitation, no fear, no guilt. Noah's breath caught in his chest. The ground seemed to have disappeared beneath his feet. His world, the one he believed to be solid, collapsed in an instant. Emily was there, in another man's arms, as if the years with him had meant nothing. As if the home they built together, the promises made, the moments shared, were disposable. A bitter taste rose in his throat. The betrayal wasn't just in the physical act, but in the conscious decision to hide, to deceive, to lie every day while looking at him as if nothing was wrong. His body shook, a silent anger mixed with a kind of pain he had never felt before. It wasn't just about the kiss. It was about everything it represented. The time when she must have already been living this lie, the excuses, the small signs that he ignored, the false normality. Everything converged to that moment, an end being put in a story that he didn't want to see end like this. But there was no turning back. There were no more excuses. Emily had made her choice, and he had just witnessed the price of it. He wanted to move, he wanted to confront her, he wanted to demand explanations. But something held him in place. The brutal clarity of what had just happened still did not allow for action. Every muscle in his body was tense, ready to explode, but the weight of disappointment kept him immobile. He forced himself to take a deep breath, forcing air into his lungs as his mind processed the extent of the damage. The betrayal was real. It was there, in front of him, impossible to deny. But there was still something more. Something he didn't know yet, but would soon discover. Something that would make that betrayal seem like just the first blow of a much greater truth. Noah left the party without looking back. The heavy air, the hurried steps, the thoughts boiling in a chaotic mix of pain and indignation. Emily's betrayal was a blunt blow, a punch straight to the gut, but something inside him told him there was more. That this was not the end of the discovery, but only the beginning. His mind swirled around the details, trying to understand how far this went, how long she had been deceiving him, what else was hidden beneath the perfect facade she had built. He needed answers, he needed to see with his own eyes what Emily had become when she wasn't under his gaze. Adrenaline pulsed as she drove through the city streets, her chest burning with the urgency to get home before her. When he finally entered the house they shared, the silence inside was deafening. The walls seemed to watch, filled with memories that now seemed empty. The sofa where they sat together, the photos spread across the bookshelf, the smell of her perfume still permeating the air. It all seemed like a staged scenario, a skillfully sustained lie. He ran his hands through his hair, trying to contain the whirlwind inside him. He walked around the room, trying to find some clue, some concrete proof of what he already knew. He opened drawers, looked at everyday objects as if they were pieces of a puzzle he needed to put together. But nothing there screamed betrayal. It was as if Emily had managed to hide everything perfectly. Then an idea popped into his mind. Something he had never thought about doing, because he never imagined he would need to. Emily's cell phone, which she always left on the sideboard next to the door when she got home, wasn't there. It was unusual. She used to leave it there without worry, but not now. That meant she was taking precautions, that there was something there he shouldn't see. But he knew there was another way. Her laptop. She worked a lot there, had saved passwords, and no one knew their combinations well. The hesitation lasted seconds before opening the device and entering the code she used for almost everything. It worked. The screen lit up, and his hands shook as he navigated through the folders. He quickly glanced through the emails, the messages. Until he found something. A specific folder, hidden among work documents. The name seemed random, but when it opened, the impact was like a cold blade being stabbed into his chest. There were exchanges of messages, records, proof of transfers. His gaze swept over the conversations, each word a deeper blow than the last. Emily didn't just cheat on him. She had been cheating on him for longer than he imagined. But that wasn't what made his breath hitch. That wasn't what made his vision go dark for an instant. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was financial. Emily embezzled money. And it wasn't much. She had created an account in the name of third parties, moving amounts that, when added together, reached exorbitant values. And the worst part of that money belonged to him. There were investments, assets, resources accumulated over the years, everything being slowly drained without him noticing. Betrayal now took on a new meaning. She wasn't just lying about an affair, but about something much bigger, something that could destroy everything he'd built. The blood pounded in her temples as she read one of the recent messages, sent to the man she had seen with her that night. Everything is ready. Soon he signs the documents without realizing it. From then on, there is no turning back. Noah's fingers gripped the sides of the laptop tightly, his eyes fixed on the screen as if he couldn't believe what he was reading. Documents. She was manipulating something to get him to sign, something that could cost much more than his wedding. It could cost you your entire financial life. Your name. Your future. Emily not only chose to betray, but plotted her destruction. The sound of the key turning in the door brought him back to reality. Emily entered, her steps light, her expression serene, as if nothing had happened. She stopped when she saw him there, the light from the laptop illuminating his face, his posture rigid, his hands shaking as he held the device. The silence between them stretched for a moment, an invisible abyss forming in the middle of the room. He looked up, staring at her, waiting, testing what she would do in the face of what was about to be revealed. Emily hesitated, noticed the tension, something in her face changed. A shadow passed across her eyes, a flicker of guilt or perhaps just the fear of being discovered. Noah didn't give him time to react. His tone was cold, filled with the brutal certainty of what he knew. "How long have you been stealing from me?" The question cut the air between them like a knife. Emily blinked rapidly, trying to process, trying to come up with an answer that would get around it. But there wasn't. He saw the way her chest rose and fell in a contained sigh, her lips parted, as if searching for words that simply weren't there. "I don't know what you're talking about," she tried, but the voice betrayed her usual assurance. Noah let out a short, bitter laugh. He picked up the laptop, turned the screen towards her and pointed at the tests. "Then tell me this isn't real. Tell me that these messages, these transfers, these documents you planned for me to sign. Tell me none of this is true." Emily remained silent, her eyes fixed on the screen. Noah's heart was pounding, but it was no longer from pain. It was out of anger. Out of indignation. By the clarity that the woman with whom he shared years of his life, nights of complicity, was there, trying to engineer his ruin. The affair she was maintaining was already a deep wound, but knowing that everything went beyond a love betrayal transformed it into something monstrous. "You don't understand, Noah," she began, her voice trailing off. "I just wanted to secure my future. You were always in control of everything. I just wanted security." The excuse echoed in his mind like poison. Security. At his expense. After all. After every promise, every moment you believed was real. He felt a lump form in his throat, but he refused to let it show. Emily was there, in front of him, and she was no longer the woman he thought he knew. This was someone who had planned every detail to betray him, to deceive him in every way possible. The silence between them became heavy, suffocating. Noah ran his hands over his face, closing his eyes for a moment before speaking, this time without hesitation, without room for any concession. "You're going to pay me for this." Emily shivered. And in that moment, something changed. Noah was no longer a betrayed man. He was a man about to change the game. The silence between Noah and Emily became unbearable, like an invisible barrier separating two strangers. She was there, standing still, trying to find a way out, but everything around her screamed that there was no longer any escape. The truth was exposed, naked and raw, and he saw it now like never before. The woman he loved, who protected, who made plans alongside him, no longer existed. In his place, there was someone calculating, who not only destroyed a marriage, but tried to take away everything he had, as if he could erase his existence with signatures and bank embezzlement. Her eyes were wide, but there was no longer that familiar glow, that sweetness he remembered from their first years together. There was only fear left. But not the kind of fear that comes from regret. It was the fear of someone who was caught. Emily tried to take a step forward, but Noah raised his hand in a dry gesture, as if drawing an invisible line between them. The air inside that house was heavy, charged with a past that could not be recovered. Every inch of that space held memories, and now each of them seemed tainted by the lie. Her face was shaking slightly, and for the first time in a long time, she looked vulnerable. But he could no longer trust. He could no longer feel sorry. "There's no going back, Emily," Noah's voice was firm, filled with a resolve he didn't even know he possessed. "You spent time planning how to destroy me, how to take everything from me behind my back. Now I'm the one who's going to take everything from you." Her eyes filled with tears, but he wasn't fooled. She knew they were not tears of true regret, but of despair at being trapped. She opened her mouth, trying to speak, but she couldn't. He took a deep breath, clenched his fists, his lips trembled slightly before he finally managed to free his voice. "Noah, you need to listen to me. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I didn't want it to come to this." He laughed, a bitter laugh, full of incredulity. He ran his hand over his face, feeling frustration exploding in every part of his body. It wasn't supposed to be like this. So how was it supposed to be, Emily? How long would you deceive me? Until I signed those damn papers and lost everything? Until I was broke and you went on with your life as if I never existed? What was your plan, huh? Were you and that bastard planning to run away together after I was destroyed? "It's not that," she murmured, but couldn't hold her gaze. "It wasn't just about the money." "No." The disbelief in his voice was almost palpable. He took a step closer, watching her tremble before him. "So tell me, Emily. Tell me what it was. Because, honestly, I don't see any other explanation than that." She closed her eyes for a moment, took a deep breath, and when she opened them again, there was something there. Something that bordered on desperation, but also a final attempt to maintain control. "I wanted to get out of this life, Noah. You always had everything under control. You always made the plans, made the decisions, determined the path we would follow. I was suffocated. And when I met him, I saw a chance to be independent. To have something of my own." The confession hung in the air like poison. Noah stared at her, trying to understand how someone could justify so much cruelty with such empty words. Independence. He shook his head in disbelief. "You wanted independence, so you decided to steal from the man who gave you everything. You wanted to be free, so you chose to betray me in the worst way possible. Do you hear yourself, Emily? Do you realize the absurdity of what you're saying?" She bit her lower lip, as if she knew that any response she gave would only make the situation worse. Tears were streaming down his face now, but there was no remorse, only fear. Fear of consequences. Afraid of what he would do with all that truth in his hands. He felt anger boil inside him, but he took a deep breath. He couldn't let the fury dominate him. It needed to be strategic. If she spent months, maybe years, planning his downfall, he couldn't react impulsively. It wouldn't be a scene of screams and broken dishes. It would be the beginning of his revenge. He took his cell phone from his pocket, opened the camera and turned the screen towards her. "You will confess," he said, coldly. "You're going to say everything. The embezzlement, the affair, the plan to deceive me. You're going to admit everything now." Emily's eyes widened. "Noah, for the love of God, don't do that. If you don't tell me, I'll tell you my way," he threatened, his voice firm. "And you know I can make your life hell." She hesitated, the tears flowing harder now. Her breathing was heavy, erratic, like she was about to collapse. "Noah, please. I lost control. I made bad choices. But you pushed me into this too." His laugh was thunder in the room. "Did I push you? Is this serious, Emily? Are you trying to blame it on me? After everything you've done?" She sobbed, hands shaking. "I knew there was no way out." Noah waited, impassive. She looked at her cell phone, then at him, and finally swallowed hard before starting to speak, her voice weak, shaky. I diverted money from the joint account. I transferred it to another account, in someone else's name. I did it because I wanted to make sure that when I left, I had security. The plan was for you to sign documents that would give him access to the rest, but I didn't want it to come to that. I just wanted to protect myself. Protect yourself, he repeated, shaking his head. You destroyed everything, Emily. She broke down in tears, covering her face with her hands. Noah stopped recording, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on his chest. He looked at it one last time, and this time there was nothing there. No trace of love, no memory that could be rescued. Just emptiness. Pack your things and get out of this house, he said, his voice sharp. Now. She lifted her face, her eyes red and swollen. Noah, please. Now, he repeated, with no room for argument. Emily realized there was nothing more to say. That any words would be useless. She took one last look around, as if trying to take in for the last time what she was about to lose. And then, with no more arguments, no more excuses, he turned and walked up the stairs, leaving behind the life he once had. The silence that remained in the house after Emily left was almost palpable, as if the echoes of betrayal were still permeating the air. Noah remained there, motionless, feeling the weight of the night on his shoulders, his gaze fixed on the door that had closed behind her. His body felt heavy, but not from tiredness, but from an emotional exhaustion that seemed to steal all his energy. What came now? Should he feel relieved that he had finally gotten the truth out, that he had exposed the woman who had spent months, maybe years, destroying his confidence while smiling at his side? But there was no relief. There was just a cruel emptiness and the certainty that nothing could be undone. The love, the security, the partnership, everything he believed he had built had been ripped away as if it had never existed. And now, what was left? He looked around and saw a home that he no longer felt like his own. Every piece of furniture, every object, every detail of that house was a cruel reminder of the lie in which he lived. How was it possible not to have noticed before? How did you manage to be fooled for so long? The laptop was still on the table, the dark screen reflecting only his own expression. Noah closed it with a dry movement and walked around the room like an aimless man, feeling the weight of betrayal transform into something deeper. It wasn't just the fact that Emily had lied. It wasn't just the money she tried to steal. It was the fact that she did it while continuing to act like nothing was happening, like every kiss, every touch, every word exchanged between them was still sincere. He remembered the way she laughed with him, the nights they spent talking about the future, the trips planned, the small displays of affection that now seemed completely empty. How did she manage to pretend for so long? How was someone able to maintain such a flawless mask? He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, but the suffocating feeling didn't go away. I needed to get out of there. He needed air, distance, something that didn't make him feel trapped inside that emotional prison. He took the car keys, walked through the door and drove without a defined destination, without a clear thought other than the need to escape everything for a few moments. The streets were silent, and streetlights flashed past the window, creating shadows inside the car. The heart was still beating fast, the mind working in endless cycles of unanswered questions. Could he have reacted differently? Could I have prevented everything from getting to this point? But there was no more room for guesswork. What was done could not be changed. He was betrayed, deceived, manipulated. And now all that was left was to decide how to move forward. Noah stopped the car near the park where he used to run on Saturday mornings. He stepped outside, feeling the cold early morning breeze touch his skin, bringing with it some of the clarity his mind desperately needed. He walked slowly, his steps firm, but full of thoughts. Emily's betrayal might have been enough to destroy him, but something inside him still burned. A part that refused to become a victim, that wouldn't accept just being the man who lost everything. He wasn't that kind of man. I wouldn't allow Emily to get away with it, to carry on with her life as if nothing had happened. She tried to ruin his life, and now it was his turn to do something about it. As he walked, he took out his cell phone and opened the recording. The file was there, intact, undeniable proof of what Emily had done. All it took was one move, one decision, and he could guarantee that she would pay for everything. But something made him hesitate. How far should he go? He could report what she did, make sure she never had access to the money again, expose her betrayal to everyone who knew her, turn her into a woman marked by dishonesty. But would that be enough? Did he want justice or revenge? What was the line between the two? And if he crossed that line, would he still be the same man he was before? The morning passed slowly while he remained there, between conflicting thoughts, trying to understand what he should do. Emily's betrayal was already a fact, a wound that would never completely close. But now, it was up to him to decide how to take the next step. Her fate was still in his hands, and the only certainty he had was that he wouldn't let her escape without consequences. Emily thought she could win this game, but Noah was about to show her that her real mistake was underestimating him. The morning came gray and cold, reflecting exactly what Noah felt inside. He was still sitting on the park bench, his cell phone in his hands, the dark screen reflecting his eyes full of insomnia and confused thoughts. He wasn't sure how long he stayed there, hearing only the wind cutting through the trees and the sporadic noise of cars in the distance. His chest hurt not only from what he had discovered, but from the weight of the decisions he needed to make. On one side, anger screamed for justice, demanding that he make Emily pay for everything she did, that he expose her, that he ensure that she never has the chance to start over without bearing the mark of betrayal. But there was another part inside him, a quieter and more uncomfortable voice, that asked how far he wanted to go. What would be the price of revenge? Would he be willing to lose more of himself in the process? He sighed heavily, closing his eyes for a moment, trying to find some definitive answer within himself. The phone vibrated in his hand, snapping him out of his daze. When he looked at the screen, a familiar name was flashing. Your lawyer. Noah hesitated, but answered, bringing the device to his ear with a neutral tone, without showing any emotion. The man on the other end of the line spoke matter-of-factly, stating that Emily had already been officially notified of the divorce proceedings. The document had been delivered in the morning, and his reaction was exactly as expected, despair. She had tried to contact him several times, but Noah didn't answer. Now, upon learning that she no longer had control over anything, she had turned to her lawyer, trying to negotiate some kind of agreement, trying to minimize the damage. But there was no agreement possible. The damage was already done. Noah thanked him for the call and hung up without thinking twice. That was it. The process was already underway, the separation was a fait accompli, and Emily could no longer escape the consequences of her actions. He returned home in no hurry, driving as if each street was part of a maze from which he was still trying to find his way out. When he parked, he spent a few seconds in the car before finally getting out and facing what was left of his married life. The atmosphere was different, as if her absence had sucked any trace of life out of the place. The room, which had previously been welcoming, now seemed like an empty, soulless space. He climbed the stairs slowly, feeling a weight in each step, until he reached his room. Part of Emily was still there. Some clothes, scattered objects, memories that he wanted to get out of there as quickly as possible. Before he could start organizing what needed to be removed, he heard the sound of the doorbell echoing through the house. His body went rigid. He knew who he was. He took a deep breath before going down and opening the door. Emily was there, her eyes red, her shoulders tense, holding the strap of her bag as if it was the only thing holding her steady. She looked smaller, more fragile, like she was on the verge of collapse. But Noah felt no compassion. He just watched her, waiting for her to say something. "We can talk," her voice was low, almost a whisper. He didn't respond right away. He just leaned slightly against the door, crossing his arms, making it clear that he wouldn't make this easy for her. "What exactly do you want to talk about, Emily? About the fact that you betrayed me?" About how you tried to destroy me? Or about how you now realize you've lost everything? She closed her eyes for a moment, biting her lower lip, trying to contain her emotions. I know I was wrong. I know nothing I say now will change what I did. But I just wanted you to listen to me. Noah let out a short, bitter laugh. Hear what? More lies. More excuses. You think I still care about every word that comes out of your mouth? Emily lowered her head, clasping her hands together. She seemed lost, as if for the first time she was feeling the real weight of the consequences. But that didn't change anything. I never wanted things to end like this, she continued, her voice breaking. I don't know at what point I lost my way. Everything seemed like a path of no return, and I kept going, thinking I could control the situation. But I couldn't. I ruined everything. Noah watched her without blinking. You ruined everything when you decided to stab me in the back. When you cheated on me not just with another man, but when you tried to steal what I had built so hard. You could have just filed for divorce. But no. You wanted to come out the winner. Only now you're alone. You lost the money, you lost your lover, you lost me. So tell me, Emily, what do you really want? She looked up, and for a brief moment, he saw something there he didn't expect. It wasn't just regret. It was the certainty that she had thrown everything away without having a real plan for afterwards. I just wanted you to forgive me, his voice was broken. Not so that we can go back, I know that will never happen. But so that I can move forward without carrying this as an eternal burden. Noah felt something inside him tremble, but not with compassion. It was something deeper, more definitive. I can't give you that, he said, firmly. Because forgiveness doesn't erase what happened. It doesn't give back the years you threw away. It doesn't change the fact that when you had the chance to be honest, you chose to destroy me. So don't ask me for something that you didn't bother to preserve yourself. Don't ask me for anything, Emily. You made your choice. Now live with it. She closed her eyes, and for once, she didn't try to argue. He just nodded slowly, as if he finally understood that this conversation was the end. Without another word, she turned and began to walk away, her footsteps echoing down the path. Noah watched until she disappeared down the street. And when he closed the door, he knew it was time to move on. He would no longer carry that pain. He wouldn't look back. Emily made her choice. Now it was his turn to choose something new. The next few days were a blur for Noah. The silence inside the house seemed louder than any noise, as if every wall carried the weight of what happened. But, contrary to what I could imagine, Emily's absence did not bring sadness. There was no more room for useless regrets or nostalgia. He didn't miss it, he didn't miss her presence, her fake smiles, her empty gestures that he now knew meant nothing. What I felt was something different, a strange sensation of freedom, mixed with the certainty that I was finally taking control of my own life. It was a new beginning, but a beginning that came after a devastating storm. The divorce process was quick. With the evidence he had, Emily had no chance of contesting it. The lawyers took care of everything, ensuring that every detail was resolved without him losing a single penny. All her attempts to negotiate, to try to alleviate her situation, were ignored. He knew he couldn't trust any word that came out of his mouth. She was desperate, trying to hold on to any crumb that could keep her life from completely falling apart. But there was no longer a way for her. The lover abandoned her as soon as he realized that he could no longer benefit from the situation, leaving her alone, without money, without support, without a way out. Emily tried to move on with her life, but the past followed her like a shadow that was impossible to get rid of. The people around began to discover the truth. Mutual friends moved away, family members didn't look at her in the same way. Job opportunities began to disappear. No one wanted to associate with someone who cheated on her own husband and tried to destroy him. People's looks of contempt were a constant reminder of her choices, and with each passing day, Emily felt the weight of her own ruin. She lost everything. The luxury, the stability, the false security she believed she had with her lover. In the end, I was completely alone. Noah, on the other hand, was rebuilding himself. He decided he wouldn't let that experience define who he was. She returned to focusing on work, taking care of herself, rediscovering the pleasures she had left aside over the years. He started going out more, allowing himself to meet new people without carrying the weight of the past on his shoulders. And that's how he met someone he didn't expect. Chance led him to an unexpected encounter, a genuine smile in the midst of chaos, a look that carried no secrets, just sincerity. He wasn't in a hurry. He didn't want to replace what he had, because now he knew it was never real. But he was willing to try, to build something new, without ghosts of the past to haunt him. Emily's fate took a cruelly ironic turn. The man she risked everything for whom she threw away years of marriage, left her without even looking back. With no money, no influence, no options, she had to start over from scratch. But starting over without having anyone's trust was a challenge she never imagined facing. The glow she carried faded. There were no more admiring looks, just judgment. And perhaps the worst part was knowing that it was all her own doing. She was not a victim of circumstances. She was the architect of her own destruction. Noah, in turn, moved forward without looking back. There was no more resentment, just learning. He came out of that story stronger, more aware of what really mattered. It wasn't about revenge, it wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It was about moving forward knowing that you did the right thing, knowing that, in the end, those who betray always pay the price. Emily made her choices. He did his. And while she wallowed in the consequences, he walked toward a new life. And now, I want to hear from you. What did you think of this story? Comment your opinion, I want to know what you would have done in Noah's place. Subscribe to the channel for more impactful stories like this. And remember, betrayal is never worth it. Here, we do not support and never romanticize this type of attitude. Until next time.